The Miami Dolphins are stepping into an offseason that feels like a crossroads. The potential is there. The pieces are in place, or at least most of them. But something has to change. Something has to give. And it all starts with Chris Grier. The Dolphins general manager finds himself in a high-stakes chess match where every move, every decision, could dictate the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. And let's be real, this is not an easy puzzle to solve. The roster has its strengths, sure. A young, talented quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. Explosive playmakers like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. A defense with the potential to be elite when healthy. But here's the problem. Talent alone isn't enough. The Dolphins have had talent before, but when it's mattered most, they've come up short. The end of the 2023 season was proof of that. Injuries played a role, but so did roster construction, depth, and the inability to match up against the league's true heavyweights when it counted. And now, as the front office stares down an offseason filled with difficult choices, there's another issue hanging over their heads: money. For months, the Dolphins were staring at a salary cap situation that looked bleak. They were in the red, restricted in what they could do, and with more questions than answers about how they were going to build a stronger team within those financial constraints. Then the NFL dropped a game-changing announcement. The 2025 salary cap will increase significantly, landing somewhere between $277.5 million and $281.5 million. That's a huge leap from last season's $255.4 million. For teams struggling with cap space, this was the equivalent of finding a lifeline when they needed it most. So, what does that mean for Miami? Well, technically, they're no longer in the red. OvertHecap.com reports that the Dolphins now sit about $1.562 million under the cap. But before anyone gets too excited, let's put that number into perspective, because when you factor in the money they'll need to sign their draft class, that number flips. Suddenly, Miami is looking at being $6.742 million over the cap in effective space. Not exactly a free pass to spend big in free agency. Now, here's the thing. The Dolphins don't have to be fully cap compliant right now. The real deadline to get under the cap is March 12th, when the new league year begins. That buys them some time. They aren't scrambling to make moves today. But make no mistake, moves are coming. Because this isn't just about getting under the cap. It's about creating enough flexibility to actually improve the team. Miami has to re-sign players. They have to add depth. They need reinforcements in key areas. And right now, they don't have the financial room to make that happen. That means restructuring contracts. That means making difficult cuts. That means deciding who is essential and who is expendable. The most obvious candidate for a contract restructure? Tua Tagovailoa. Miami's quarterback is entering the final year of his rookie deal, and whether people like it or not, an extension is coming. The Dolphins aren't letting their franchise QB walk, and the sooner they get that deal done, the more they can manipulate the cap to free up space in the short term. It's a move that seems inevitable at this point. But that's just the beginning. Two names keep coming up when discussing cap casualties: Terron Armstead and Bradley Chubb. Let's start with Armstead. When he's on the field, he's one of the best left tackles in the game. But that's the issue when he's on the field. Injuries have piled up, and at this point, can Miami really afford to keep paying top dollar for a player who can't stay healthy? If the Dolphins designate him as a post-June 1 cut, they could free up a significant chunk of cap space. Then there's Chubb. The Dolphins invested heavily in him, believing he could be a game-changer on defense. But between injuries and inconsistency, the return on investment hasn't been what they hoped. If Miami decides to move on, a post-June 1 cut could save them around $34.5 million in cap space. That's money that could be used to bolster the offensive line, to add another weapon on offense, to reinforce a defense that has shown flashes, but still lacks the depth to withstand injuries. The Dolphins aren't in rebuild mode. They're too talented for that, but they're also not quite where they need to be to truly contend for Super Bowl. And that's what makes this offseason so crucial. It's not just about keeping the roster together. It's about building a team that can actually compete with the best of the best. Because let's be honest, Miami hasn't done that yet. They've had great regular season moments. They've looked unstoppable at times. But when it's come down to the wire, when they've had to go toe-to-toe with the true powerhouses, they haven't measured up. That's not to say this team isn't close. They are. But close isn't good enough anymore.